welcome back for another Total Tactics video, but today the video is going to be a little bit different. Rather than introduce you to a brand new tactic, we're going to talk a little bit about what I think the best tactics are that are existing currently on the channel. And remember, you can always download any of these tactics in the Total Tactics Discord. There's a link in the description below, as well as that Discord has a link to a Dropbox folder where all the tactics are archived as well. And one of the things that's going to happen is I'm going to start putting some secret tactics into the folder as well, just to give you a chance to try out some of the bonus tactics I've been working on privately, or things that I use either in PvP or things that I've been using to do something a little bit weird, like different strikerless formations and different 3 defender and 1 center back formations and stuff like that. So just to give you something to play with and a little reward for being faithful to the Total Tactics series. And I hope it's content that you enjoy. But before we start talking about what some of those options are, I've got a little bit of a breakdown for you of some of the previous tactics and things that we've tried on the channel. So one of the things I did is I took the tactics, threw them into a spreadsheet, and started to compare across all of the tests which tactics kind of performed the best. And let's take a look at that graphic right now. And you can kind of see that it does demonstrate that there is a clear winner for the best tactic of the series, and I think it's something that we should really kind of delve into a little bit more. Alright, so this is the table of all of the tactics so far that have been created on the series, all 14 of them, and what it is a heat map of where each tactic's goal difference and points total kind of fits within the same league, right? So if you look at the column for elite, the best elite point total is the 41032, had 81 points in the elite division, which also had the top goal difference. So what you can tell by how those columns break down is that's the bright green, right? So the bright green is what you're looking for in terms of determining what the best tactic is in each of these sections. I think that's really interesting because what you can see here on this tactic is the 4-3-1-2 Metzala tactic just crushed it. This narrow tactic was the top goal difference and point scorer in 3 of the 4 divisions. Well, in Underdog, the 4-3-3 Rats 3-striker tactic did have a slightly higher goal difference, but the 100 points threshold is only broken by the 4-3-1-2, and then also 90 points in the Balance League is the high watermark there. 86 points in the Average League is tied for the high watermark. It's tied for the top goal difference in that league. It's the top goal difference in Balanced, and it performed very well in the Elite League with one of the best goal differences and one of the best point totals. So I think the 4-3-1-2 test number 9 looks like it is the best tactic. So I think we will spend some time kind of revisiting that tactic in a little bit and what sort of makes it special. But also I think it's really important to note too, the 4-1-0-3-2, the double winger, double striker, shadow striker tactic there, that is test number 7, crushed the Elite League. The best result we've had in the Elite League so far, and I think it is something that did pretty well in the other divisions as well. It didn't do poorly, an excellent goal difference and Balanced. It's something that I think is worth paying attention to as a tactic that would work in higher divisions and something that you should give a try to. And we'll remind you and take a walk down memory lane as well about that tactic in a moment. And then the third tactic that I think I want to talk about here in this video is the double Doritos tactic. The 4-2-1-2-1 is one that did pretty well at the Elite League, and I think that's a tactic we often forget about, and it did very well in the other divisions as well, including a massive goal difference in the Balance League, and it is one that looks to be one here on this list that is pretty good. The 4-2-4 wingers tactic, video number 14, did well as well, but we all just watched that video, and it's very similar to the 4-1-0-3-2. So focusing on those 3 tactics, the basically test 9, 8, and 7. Like we were in a groove back then. And I want to kind of take a look at some of those tactics again and talk about what we learned here for the FM22 cycle. So let's start that process. All right, so here we have the 4-3-1-2 tactic that I was just talking about in the show open, and I think that this tactic is one that a lot of people had a lot of success with. Not necessarily like my version in particular, but at least the shape is one that saw a lot of love on FM22 this season. So the Metsalas going wide could be CM attacks. I've seen that be very good as well. The DLP on defend could be a ball winning midfielder. It could be on support. It could be an RPM. Like the good thing about this tactic is it is very flexible, right? In some situations, you could play a Carolero on one of the sides. You could play a box-to-box midfielder if you need a little bit more steel. There's a lot of options for that midfield three, and really, they don't differ that much from each other. We've decided to go with the Metsala inverted wingback attempt here, which I think is very good at overloading the middle of an AI tactic, but maybe against a like PvP user, wingbacks with CM attacks might give you a little bit more of a balanced attack, but you just have a lot of options with this sort of shape, which is one thing that I love about it. If we go in and look at some of the instructions and kind of review what I think made this tactic special, and all of this is just really simple, right? We're playing out of defense, working the ball into the box, we're hitting low crosses. We can talk a little bit about the low crosses meta here for a second, and one of the things that I've loved about low crosses is it tends to lead to a lot of through balls. You don't have players prioritizing getting down the wings and to be able to float across or to whip their cross. Instead, the low cross is something that leads to a lot of cutbacks because that's how you keep the ball on the ground. It leads to a lot of through balls, and it's the way I like to see most tactics play on FM22 is through this low crosses kind of instruction, and most of my tactics have it. Again, this is a really standard instruction that we kept going to as well in transition. Roll it out to your back line, play out of defense, keeping possession. Don't just give the ball back by hoofing it forward. Counter press and counter, it's all very standard, right? And then the same thing here. This does use the offside trap. I wonder how much the test would have been improved if we had kind of turned off the offside trap as well, or triggering that press for the most part, preventing the goalkeeper distribution, which is really important to force the goalkeeper of your opponent to make those long kicks. And if you have nice, strong center backs that can then win those distribution headers, you got three midfielders coming back to win the second ball after your defender wins the header, and you retain possession. Like, it's just something that is very helpful. So there's really nothing special about this tactic aside from the shape. Because even we talked a lot about on the channel early on trying to get your players to take fewer risks, but Metsalas by nature take more risks, right? So we have them shooting less often to encourage more through balls and cutbacks when they get into those wide areas rather than shots into the side netting. The shadow striker takes more or less, and again, shoot less often, which if you've been watching the videos, I'm a huge fan of, because I think it just leads to that extra pass, and it means people don't shoot from distance as often as they should, and it's just an instruction that leads to a lot of goals, right? We're taking fewer risks, shooting less offense with these advanced forwards, and all of those things together just leads to a ton of offense for this tactic. This tactic put up big numbers. You saw it on the table, like huge amounts of goals and a stout defense, and it's just something that I still recommend. And again, it's available for download. By contrast, the second tactic that I want to talk about, and one that performed very well in the heat map, is the 4-1-0-3-2 wide. Now, this looks like a tactic that shouldn't be good defensively, but it is. The amount of pressure it puts on the opposing backline with 5 players forward means that the AI's fullbacks almost never overlap because they are marking those wingers on support. So they're afraid to overlap because they know they'll get burned. So it's a really good way to get pushback and keep the ball. And when they do press press, you got this 5-man press, there's nowhere to go with the ball, right? If they play it into the middle, the shadow striker's there. If they play it across the back line, the advanced forwards are putting pressure, which then leads to a lot of distribution headers. And so the defenders and the goalie are hitting it long. You've got a DM to sort of help the ball playing defenders clean up those headers, and you just win back possession based on long balls. And it's just a very effective tactic. This tactic scored over 100 goals in all four of the divisions. It just put up massive numbers. Defensively, it was obviously not like the best defensively tactic, but it also wasn't bad. And the reason for it being not so bad defensively is, again, the turnovers that this generates from long balls is just massive, and it's really big for the tactic. And that kind of reminds me too, something that I do a lot in PvP and in my AI saves is I work really hard for two things. One, to have a shadow striker that hopefully can jump, but two, a DM that can definitely jump. My defensive midfielders always have minimum 14 jumping reach, but I'm looking more for 15, 16 in that range because most of my tactics put pressure on the goalie and put pressure on the back line, forcing those long balls. Having a DM that can win those headers is essential, because if you can't, then you're just letting them advance the ball with a direct play. So making sure your DM is able, if you've seen me in other people's streams, in the chats, or in my own, having those short boy DMs is just not something I can co-sign. Sure, a lot of DLPs are very good, but when that player who's a DLP has 7 jumping reach, I'm just not interested. And I think there is like a strong reason to maintain that you should always have tall DMs for that reason alone. And honestly, it helps a ton on set pieces. I think you need about 4 people on your team with 15 jumping reach to be a very effective deterrent against opponents' set pieces in both PvP or in your saves against the AI. And having that tall DM gets you there, right? Then you maybe have another tall striker or 1 tall fullback, and all of a sudden you get to four players with 15 jumping reach. That to me is essential to stopping those set piece goals. So this tactic, we watched the highlights before, wingers bombing up and down the wings, sending balls across to the advanced forwards. It's just devastating, and the amount of goals it scored is just self-evident. And that spreadsheet again just makes it so clear, the goal scoring prowess of this tactic. And then finally, I want to revisit the triangles tactic, or one that's been affectionately dubbed the double Doritos, or the Toblerone tactic, with all those triangle shapes all over the pitch, maybe even a Christmas tree, whatever. But double Doritos is my favorite name, dubbed by one of the members of my chat on Twitch. So this tactic is very, very symmetrical, right? We've got the double roaming playmakers, we've got the double fullbacks, double shadow strikers, advance forward, and it just gets the business done. Something that I love about this tactic is it's an inverted narrow diamond. But what makes it interesting is the narrow diamond tactic that was developed by one of the mods on the Discord server, Fuzzy. We used a lot of Fuzzy's instructions on this tactic, trying to apply the same principles to a new shape. And it's been nothing but effective. So again, when we kind of walk through some of these things, it's very similar and looks almost exactly like the instructions on the 4-3-1-2. We've got pass into space. We've got play out of defense. We've got a standard passing directness with a higher tempo, low crosses, working the ball into box, running at the defense. And if you remember from those early videos, run at the defense plus pass into space is a combination that a lot of people don't do, but is one that is very effective. And if you've never tried it in one of your tactics, I encourage you to give it a go. And one of the things that I think you'll see in those sequences is you'll see your players run at their defenders, as they should, right? Based on the instruction. Obviously, it's called that for a reason. But as soon as the defense commits, they're also looking to pass the ball into space. And so what this tactic ends up doing is it gets a lot of midfield runners from the CM attacks to the double shadow strikers who are told to run at the defense. And when they do, and that defense commits, either the other shadow striker or the advanced forward is there to exploit the space behind once the defenders commit. So even though it's narrow, even though it could get congested, running into space forces the opponent's defenders to commit to your ball carrier, and then if they have good vision, if they had good anticipation, if they have good passing, they're going to find that pass to those players running behind, exploiting that space. And this tactic showed that in spades, and is one of the reasons why it actually performed very well and much better than I would have expected otherwise. So a really interesting experiment that happened with this tactic, and one that I think makes this tactic really good going forward, and something that late in the cycle, if you want to try a new challenge with Football Manager, and this triangles tactic is one that if you haven't tried, I think it's cool, because it's maybe one that when you look at it, you're like, that doesn't look very good, but it performs incredibly. So trying out the triangles tactic, haha, see what I did there, it is something that I think is worth exploring if you're an FM user still and trying to play and find ways to kind of innovate still a little bit more on FM22. This tactic is a way to do it. And the Shadow Strikers are just standard, right? Pass it shorter, shoot less often. They want to run at the ball, take more risks, find the through balls. They're not set to run wider or anything like that. They just move into channels. They dance around with the advance forward. These fullbacks are setting the width, which is something we talked about a lot early on too. They don't overlap. They don't send in crosses. They hold their position and they don't take risks. But as we saw from the highlights in the original video, these fullbacks sit in this space here between the top of the 18 and inside the halfway line, and they just don't move. But if they don't move and are holding their position on offense there, the opponent fullbacks mark them. Like, they have to watch them, and they're expecting the overlap that never comes, but it sort of freezes them. And that creates a lot of space for our 4 central attackers to overload. And it's just a really interesting kind of instruction that has been talked about a lot. And the same roaming playmakers are just default roaming playmakers. The CM attack is just taking fewer risks, but moving into channels and getting further forward. And all these combinations create great possession passing triangles. We got the great width being held by those fullbacks, and it's just a tactic that it doesn't look like amazing, but it plays really well, and I encourage you to give it a spin. So one last thing I kind of want to show you and talk about here in this video is coming up, but I did one of my own new tests using an interesting method. So let's see how a bunch of these tactics sort of stacked up against a new testing method. So let's check it out. All right, so I decided to do one last weird little simulation test with 10 of the Total Tactics tests based on the table that we looked at earlier. And this is what I did. I took 5 clubs in the Vanarama North, none of which were overwhelming favorites in the division, and 5 clubs in the Vanarama South using kind of the same determination. Now, as I took over those clubs, I kind of paid attention to the team preview for each team, and once they showed me what the kind of best 11 was for those teams, I installed one of the 10 Total Tactics tests, what a mouthful, for each team that most closely mirrored the personnel that FM thought suited a base tactic for that team. So trying my best to control for making sure the squad had the players to at least attempt to play the tactic well. And then I just started simulating seasons. One season at a time, I delegated every single responsibility, including transfers and everything else, to the staff of the club, and went through and just started simulating seasons with the clubs. Now, I can't go through and give you a full rundown. That would be its own video itself on how these clubs did, but I do want to kind of show you over 10 seasons what happened and what were the clubs that made it the furthest in the table. So we'll start off because one team made it to the Premier League, and that ended up being Watford. Watford, you say, obviously is not in the Vanarama to start, but it did mean that one of the managers got sacked, got a newer job, and ended up joining Watford eventually. And I think if we take a look at, we click on Watford here, and we can look at the manager. Where's the, I guess I should instead... Nah, maybe this just isn't the best thing to do. Either way, I don't remember what squad Watford started off as. Either way, the point is, this manager for Watford is playing, if we look at their tactic for the senior squad, they're playing the 4-2-4. So eventually taking over Watford in the championship got them promoted to the Premier League using the 4-2-4 tactic in test number 14, which is something that is very powerful and did the business for Watford in the championship. But what's maybe more interesting than that result are the facts that Stevenage is in the championship here in 10th place and surviving. Dover, who do start in the Vanarama divisions, has made it all the way to the championship in 10 years. We're also the manager of Birmingham and of Portsmouth. Those are also, and Stevenage, are all teams that got sacked, and then we're able to take over other jobs. So some of that happened because, teams got went up too fast and they couldn't last and they got relegated, and that maybe led to a sacking in a couple instances. But for the most part, most teams like Stevenage and Portsmouth were all taken over when the clubs were in League Two. So getting double promotions as well, just using holiday mode, is something that it can be very impressive. So Portsmouth played the 5-1-2-1-2 and was able to get 8th in the championship. Now, this is interesting because the 5-1-2-1-2 did not do very well. For a long time, it was the tactic that could not get out of the Vanarama divisions. And so it's something that I think is very dependent on personnel. If you have the personnel, it can do really well. Stevenage, though, finishing mid-table in the championship, staying in the championship for a while, they played just a standard 4-3-3. This is something that did amazing for the original team, and then they just got up one season too fast. It was Telford, and then Telford was a little bit too high. They got relegated, and then the new manager had to find a new job, and it was Stevenage in Division 2, and then they got back-to-back promotions. So this 4-3-3, the very first tactic test, is also very good. Now, something that I think is really interesting, and one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure we sort of talked through this test that I made, is Dover, right? Dover in the championship in 10 seasons with the AI in charge is very impressive. How did they get there? They got there with Fuzzy's Narrow Diamond, which is a tactic that I think is really good, did very well. Dover climbed the divisions extremely quickly, and it's another tactic that really influenced all of the tactics that we used on FM22 throughout the tactics series. And I just want to thank Fuzzy for this innovation and this particular build and all of the team instructions that did so well for us across a lot of different tactics. And Dover Athletic also thanks you, Fuzzy, as well. So Birmingham got relegated. Birmingham was using and every time I took a new job, I made sure to install the same tactic for the manager that left. They were using the 3-striker narrow tactic to get back into the championship, but then it took them straight down. But let's look at League One, because I do think League One is kind of interesting as well, because we have no teams in League One because all of them got promoted to the championship. League Two is kind of where a lot of the teams started to kind of stall out using the tactics, and some of that I think is the limitations of holiday mode in general. But you do have a team like Kidderminster here getting promoted to League One, which is kind of crazy, just given where they are right now in the pyramid. And Kidderminster, I believe, is the team I'm currently live with. Yeah, it is. So Kidderminster's tactic is this offset asymmetric 4-2-3-1, which is a more recent test on the thing. And this manager never got fired, right? So League One in 10 years from the Vanarama National Divisions, and has made it there with the same tactic over 10 years, a pretty impressive result. And the same is true for Dulwich Hamlet, and this is my favorite one because Dulwich Hamlet did it with double Doritos. And Dulwich Hamlet was in League One. They got relegated. The manager kept their job, but Dulwich Hamlet went up through the divisions and was able to continue to impress. They won they third place in League Two. They won the National League. They've won the trophy. They've won the National League South when they were there. So they won some divisions with the double Doritos, which is really cool and really interesting. And they went up through the divisions. J.J. McKiernan, 12 goals here. Abu Kamara, like Giovanni McGregor plays for them in real life. And it's just a cool result to see. But anyway, I thought I'd share the results of that test with you. This has been a pretty long video today, but I did enjoy kind of walking down memory lane through some of the tactics that we've had so far. So I hope that you enjoyed the journey as well. There will be a couple more videos here to come as we end FM22 and start to look forward towards FM23. We'll talk about some of our FM23 plans as well in future videos, maybe a 5-change challenge coming your way. But as always, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, and help me continue to grow this channel and this content as we head forward towards the new cycle. So every subscription helps. All of the links to my Twitch is in the description. And you know what? Let's talk about that really quick, because on Twitch, you can see behind me, we've got some shirts on the wall. We got kits from SBR's esports team. We've got a kit from SBR's first team. We got a scarf back there. SBR is the save I've been doing on Twitch for the last several months. I've started a relationship with the club, which I've mentioned on the channels before, making content for their esports Twitter as well. And it's something I'm really proud of and really happy to be a part of, and looking forward to more SBR content in FM23. And some of that might come to the YouTube channel, so be on the lookout for that as well. But again, thank you for riding along on these Total Tactics videos. I don't know that there'll be any more, but if you pay attention to the Discord and if you join the shared Dropbox folder, there will be some FM22 tactics kind of sneaking in there. I'll throw in some of the ones that I've been working on over the course of the cycle, maybe some ones from really far back before I was even making YouTube videos, and give you a chance to try out different things as well. So look for the Dropbox folder, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back next week with another new video. As always, goodbye.